Hi, welcome to Swing State News. My name is Lucas Whitty, political researcher of the Battleground States. Today we are looking into recent bills introduced by Michigan legislators. After nearly a month-long break from Michigan legislators, they reconvened April 14, and during last week, the House introduced 48 bills and 18 resolutions. The Michigan Senate introduced 8 bills and 5 resolutions. Additionally, 15 bills passed one chamber, 4 bills were enrolled, and 22 resolutions were adopted. Before we get into it, leave a comment below if you support or oppose any of the introduced or passed bills. I will cover some of the ones introduced first, and lastly, I will cover what has been enrolled. A bill that passed one chamber is really important, so stay to the end to hear what it is all about. All right, let's get into it. Starting with the concurrent House Resolution number 0007, introduced by Republican Representative Luke Merriman, this resolution applies to the U.S. Congress to call a convention under Article 5 of the U.S. Constitution. The purpose of that convention would be to propose amendments to the U.S. Constitution in 3 main areas: impose fiscal restraints on the federal government, limit the power and jurisdiction of the federal government, and limit the terms of office for federal officials and members of Congress. The phrase call a convention means 34 of the 50 states have to pass similar resolutions in order to force the U.S. Congress to call a convention on the matter. So far, only 20 states have passed this type of resolution, Kansas being one of the most recent ones. House Resolution 269 of 2026 was introduced by Democrat Representative Aaron Brins. It is a resolution to call on the United States House and Senate Committees on Armed Services to investigate the February 28, 2026 strike on Shajara Tayyiba Primary School and call on the United States Secretary of War Pete Hegseth to resign. On February 28, the strike on the primary school reportedly killed 175 people, including 100 children. This is not the only instance of young students being harmed in the ongoing conflict. Also on February 28, 2026, Imam Reza Elementary School in the city of Abik Gazvin province was damaged as a result of a strike on a nearby communications tower. Windows were shattered, and a student on the playground less than 400 feet away from the tower was reportedly killed, seemingly due to debris from the blast. If resolved by the House of Representatives, we call on the United States House and Senate Committees on Armed Services to investigate the February 28, 2026 strike on Shajara Tayyiba Primary School to determine why and how this incident occurred, including an examination of alleged intelligence failings and the decision-making that went into this attack, to learn from this incident and to help prevent war crimes from being committed in the future. And be it further, also if resolved, we call on the United States Secretary of War Hegseth to resign. House Resolution 270 was introduced by Democrat Representative Brenda Carter, a resolution calling on the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development and the Michigan State Housing Development Authority to increase investments towards subsidized housing preservation, rehabilitation, and developments, and to improve existing public housing authority compliance with all federal and state health, safety, and habitability laws and regulations. House Resolution 284 and 285 were introduced by Democrat Representative Penelope Cernoglu and Aaron Brins. These bills are related to Jeffrey Epstein. 284 is a resolution to create a select committee to examine the Interlochen Center for the Arts and its relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. 285 is a resolution calling on the United States Department of Justice to conduct a full investigation of any person regardless of political affiliation mentioned in the Epstein files. House Resolution 284 has some practical significance because it would actually create a legislative select committee with investigative powers. If it passes, the committee would hold hearings, request documents, and issue a report. House Resolution 285 is largely symbolic. It sends a message to the Federal Department of Justice, but does not compel any action. The rest of the resolutions from the House and Senate were to commemorate and recognize certain groups of people and to declare the month of April several different things to bring awareness to certain groups and topics that I'm not going to cover all, but to the left of me, you can see them all. Senate Bills 895 through 902 were introduced last week, ranging from a variety of topics. Let's start with Senate Bill 902, introduced by Republican Senator Jim Runestad. This bill amends Section 1 of Chapter 11 of the Code of Criminal Procedure to prohibit probation for certain criminal sexual conduct violations. Currently, only first and third degree CSC convictions automatically bar probation in many cases. This bill would extend the prohibition across all degrees of CSC, closing what supporters call a loophole that sometimes allows probation for serious sex offenders. The intent is to ensure stricter, more consistent sentencing and greater accountability for those convicted of sexual crimes. Bill 901, introduced by Republican Senator Michelle Hoytinga, this bill creates a new act requiring that certain construction materials, specifically cement, concrete, or steel, used in state-funded public works projects must be produced in the United States. The goal is to support U.S. manufacturing jobs and reduce reliance on foreign materials and taxpayer-funded infrastructure. The rest of the Senate bills introduced last week were over certain provisions over brownfield developments, which are properties with potential environmental contaminations. Other bills covered certain tax exemptions for certain generators and changes to certain sentences regarding criminal procedure of habitual offenders. Let's move on to some House bills that were introduced. Once again, I am not going to cover all of these as there were 48 of them. We are going to cover topics on education. Starting with education, the ones that we are talking about target reading. And if you did not know, Michigan ranks 44th out of 50 states in fourth grade reading. So starting off with House Bill 5819, introduced by Republican Representative Kathy Schmaltz, this bill amends Section 1280F of the revised school code. It significantly expands and tightens requirements for how schools identify, screen, monitor, and intervene with students who struggle with reading, especially in kindergarten through third grade, and for students showing signs of dyslexia or decoding difficulties. It includes that the Michigan DOE must approve at least 3 valid and reliable universal screening assessments, at least 3 times per year. Starting in the 27 to 28 school year, all K through 3 students must be screened for dyslexia and decoding difficulties. For students identified as deficient, schools must create an individual reading improvement plan within 30 days. Interventions must be delivered in small groups or one-on-one during the school day, and schools must notify parents and provide them with home support tools. In short, House Bill 5819 aims to make early systemic reading, screening, and intervention more consistent and rigorous across Michigan schools. It builds on prior literacy laws but adds more mandates, timelines, and oversight. House Bill 5820 is similar. Introduced by Republican Representative Jamie Green, it is more focused on the teacher aspect, ensuring that teachers receive solid training in the science of reading and dyslexia support before they enter the classroom. There were a ton of bills introduced by the House last week, covering many topics that I am not going to be able to cover in this video, but some of the topics that had multiple bills include data centers. 6 bills on this: 5,776, 77, 86, 87, 90, and 91. Financial institutions, House Bill 5779 through 83. Administrative procedure, 5815 through 18, and natural resources on fishing, 5801 and 5802. On to a couple of bills that were passed by their respective chamber. Senate Bills 296 and 297 are over health facilities regarding mandatory overtime for nurses. House Bill 296, introduced by Democrat Senator Stephanie Chang, amends Part 215 of the Public Health Code by adding a new section. Here are the key provisions. Starting June 1, 2027, hospitals are prohibited from requiring a registered professional nurse, an RN, to work beyond their regularly scheduled hours or on-call hours. Exceptions include a declared state or local emergency, unexpected circumstances where the nurse cannot be relieved. Hospitals can require up to an additional 2 hours or 4 hours for rural hospitals. After a 12-hour shift, hospitals must provide the nurse with 8 consecutive hours off duty. However, a nurse can voluntarily waive up to 4 hours of this rest period within any 72-hour window. Hospitals cannot retaliate, discharge, discipline, or discriminate against an RN who refuses mandatory overtime. Hospitals must notify all employees of these rules. If a collective bargaining agreement, union contract, in effect on June 1, 2027 conflicts with this bill, the contract takes precedence until it expires. Senate Bill 297 are the penalties for violations, if these were to become law. This bill was introduced by Republican Representative Edward McBroom. The fines are: first violation $1,000, second violation $2,500, third violation $5,000, fourth or subsequent violation of $10,000. These bills passed the Senate with a 21-16 vote on both. This passed narrowly with limited GOP support, but enough to pass the first part of the chamber. It now goes on to the House. One Senate and 3 House bills are enrolled and are awaiting signature from Governor Whitmer. The most notable being the wood duck becoming the official state duck of Michigan. No, just kidding. Not really. That is law now, but the actual most notable one is House Bill 5455. I made a short about this bill and didn't realize it was not law yet, but was awaiting signature. If you would like to know what it is about, please go take a look. It will be linked in the description below. All right, that wraps up this week's Michigan legislative update. Let me know in the comments which bills you support or oppose, and which ones you would want me to cover in more depth next time. Thanks for watching Swing State News. Hit like and subscribe for more Battleground State coverage.